Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Maher. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. Welcome, everybody, to The Longer Game, the show where we talk about all things retail. I am joined today by a really OG. I don't even hate to say OG, but there's a dude that's been around Amazon for a really, really long time and e-commerce in general. And that guy's name is Chad Rubin. He is now the founder and CEO of a software called Prophecy. I just want to say welcome to the show, Chad. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be called an OG.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's really no other term for it. And by OG, I'll preface that with I got started in e-commerce back in 2010 because I just hated my job. I was managing a Starbucks and it sucked. And so I was like, I need to do something else. And I had a buddy who started a business on eBay and Amazon. I was like, tell me more about that. And I had sold old music equipment on eBay. So I knew how some of it worked, but he showed me the ropes of actually selling. He's still now running a multi-million-dollar business on multiple marketplaces. And so we've kind of gone different ways now. I'm in the agency space, but it was a totally different game back then. And before we got on, I was saying, I remember not a lot of people were talking about stuff, when I was selling in 2011, 12, 13, 14. And you were one of the people that I remember talking about stuff. So, I mean, I feel like people might say, oh, you've been around since 2016. That's an OG. I'm like, I don't know. That's not quite OG, original gangster.
I think I sold my first product on Amazon in 2006.
That's a long time ago.
It's now 2023, July.
So imagine being able to say it's been 20 years. That's a definitely more mature space than we're used to.
Yes. I could actually say those were the good old days.
Yeah.
But I definitely have seen it all, right? I've evolved and matured with the marketplace. I was in my early 20s at that time. Now I'm 38. And a lot has changed. I think we were talking about this earlier before the call started. Amazon has definitely evolved and it has gotten harder. And there is pain being inflicted on brands today. And I'm sure we'll get all into that right now, or coming up.
Yeah, I was talking to someone about this past week, and I said, the basics are really the same. And I think I could probably coach someone for an hour and you can get up in front of a stage and you can talk about Amazon strategy. If you can retain the information, you can talk real high level and sound really, I think, smart. But the execution piece is where the expertise really comes in. And that's where what you're focusing on and when, I think, has a big impact. So when I think about strategy on Amazon, it's, in this most simple form, really good real estate. So get your, product detail page conversion ready, we'll say. You got to get traffic to the page. And then there's what I'll just say is an optimization process. Now that is an oversimplification for sure, but you could talk on those points, and that's generally what's going to be there. But that shift that you're talking about, how people are executing that, that's what I think has really changed. Like when I remember, man, I remember like the first week I was selling product on Amazon. I did not ship something out right away, and they suspended my account. And my friend that helped me get started, I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, you can't mess around, man. You have to do X, Y, Z." And I remember that was like a first introduction to me. Like, okay, this is not eBay. This is a very this is a very different ballgame. They're like, you can't make the same mistakes that you could make elsewhere. But back then, it was very simplistic. I mean, people had tons of products that were not on white background and manicured like it is today. That's just one example.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, you just had to be a seller. Right now, you need to be an advertiser. You need to. I mean, I'm right now. I'm writing a post on. I'm working on writing a post on LinkedIn about how effing hard Amazon is. And like, I was inspired because somebody recently wrote like, just get started. Just start with a product, you know. And I'm thinking to myself like, page one is really hard, right? Platform dependency is really hard. Sourcing is really hard. Discovery is really hard. Fake review manipulation is hard. Like I can go down a list of like 50 things that are extremely effing hard on Amazon. And like to be a world-class brand on Amazon, which by the way, there's only about 37,500 sellers that are doing over $500,000 in revenue on Amazon. That's the top 2.5%. To get there, it's really, really, really hard. And there's no playbook, there's no blueprint, there's no YouTube video, there's no course, there's no SOP that you can watch that's going to help you get through really hard things on Amazon.
I like to say expect the unexpected. And even then, it's hard to preface like this thing could happen because Amazon makes the rules. I mean, that's a great thing, to tell a client like, well, Amazon makes the rules. We only have so much control over it. If that really is the truth and the reality, and that is the case, like one of the things that frustrated me in the seller versus, I kind of see this like seller versus brand community, selling on Amazon, and people have brands. I know were very hesitant to utilize Amazon 10 years ago. They're now more willing to lean into it because they see, and like small to big brands, but sellers were really the ones that drove growth on Amazon and caused that 3P to 1P shift to get to now 60%. Like that was really the impetus for that. But the sellers had this idea of, I remember going to like seller meetups and people were like, Amazon's just out to get you. They're trying to screw you. And it's not that they aren't screwing you, but my focus is, well, yeah, but like that's just a part of the game. So you have to find a way to, like, if you want to play, there are some rules that maybe you don't like that you have to abide by, but you have to find a way to overcome that. And if you're just saying they're out to get me, then you've already got a losing mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the money on Amazon, it's in the fringes, right? It's in the nooks and crannies, it's in the fractions, and that's where I typically like to play. And obviously, that's why I built a pricing software. We play in that alley.
Tell people about how you play in that alley with prophecy.
Yeah, so I mean, it's okay. So prophecy in general, or pricing in general, it's really hard on Amazon to figure out what your price is. Most people, they just price to market or they mark up their cost 5x. And when it comes to pricing, nobody's talking about it. Most people are focusing on Amazon, on sort of the matrix that Amazon gives you, right? The ROAS, the ACOS, revenue embedded metrics that really don't tell you much about how much you're keeping at the end of the day. And so when I was turning around my e-commerce business, that's how I came across prophecy. And that's really how I come across all the things I work on is I incubate the idea myself and then bring it to market. And it solves a real need for me. And so I'm like following all the gurus. I'm like optimizing my listings. I'm nailing PPC. And the one thing we're not doing is touching price. And then the question is, well, why don't we touch price? Because, well, people are fearful of changing price on Amazon. And it's actually a not grounded fear in reality. But then after you get through that, you're like, okay, well, is the right idea to change a price upwards? Is increasing price 5% a good idea? And what happens to my ASIN on Amazon when I do make an increase in price. And so that's the next complicated thing as you unpeel this onion, is that there's a knock-on effect on Amazon. So a price today affects your orders tomorrow. Your price today affects your ranking tomorrow. And so it's not always the optimal decision. In fact, it's not even the most profitable decision to increase price on Amazon, because conversely, you can lower price on Amazon, you can increase your demand, increase velocity, units sold, and you can actually, the sheer amount that of volume of your increases can offset that price decrease, generating more absolute profit dollars. And now you're ranking page one organically instead of paying or renting for space with PPC. So we're making small adjustments of price, right? When I say the money is in the nooks and crannies, the money is in the fringes, the money is in the fractions, because we're making small changes to pricing to maximize profit for private label brands without sacrificing your ranking position on Amazon.
I'm just gonna let everyone let that sink in for a little bit. The the willingness to ask a question and maybe even appear stupid, and not being fearful of that, I think, is what helps successful people to be successful. Now, success is a very broad term, so I'll quantify it with, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got the most money, you've got the most clout or stature, but what I think it means is you're doing something that is really positively impactful. And that could mean a lot of things. It could mean money, it could mean you have more time, it could mean you have more any kind of resources. But being able to say, well, what if we did this? What if no, that we don't do that. That's, that's a standard. Okay, well, what if it wasn't a standard? Then what would we do? I think being willing to ask those questions is part of how you find the fractions and you find the niches. Like, that's where you find opportunities, just being willing to say, well, it's always been this way. Why?
Yeah, I think it's challenging the status quo. It's challenging these like universal truths that have been created. And even in, when I talk to really smart sellers and they tell me, oh, this is the way Amazon likes it, or this is how you game the system or the ranking system or whatever it is, I'm always like, well, let me just test it myself. Like, let me look at my benchmark data. Let me look at what's happening in my business, and let me come to my own conclusions. And so I never took anything as at face value. And I think most successful people have to bend the rules a bit and challenge the status quo to create greatness.
You talked about being stuck in your e-commerce business. How would you define, being stuck for you?
Yeah. So I started this business back in 2006. And as I started to evolve and mature and professionalize, I started focusing on other bigger problems that to me would have an outsized impact on like my family and wealth and my career, such as Stubana is one, and Prosper Show was another. So I started focusing on these initiatives, and with that, I'm only one person. I'm not Elon Musk. So with
I don't even think Elon Musk is Elon Musk.
uh, with that, like my ecom business took a back seat, let's just say. So when I sold Stubana and after we sold Prosper Show, I had nothing else to do, right, outside of playing with my son, being with my family, and working back on my ecom business. And my business at the time was losing roughly, I want to say like $30,000 to $40,000 a month, just losing money. So the people at the company couldn't figure it out. And so I started to rebuild the team. I started to question everything. And so when I say stuck, the business was failing. It was red. It was a bloody mess. And I had to come in and essentially catch a falling sword. And I like to solve Rubik's Cubes.
It's a great way to put it, by the way. Catch a falling sword.
And like work towards shifting the business and making incremental changes that would benefit the business in the long run. And luckily now we're at the end of that turnaround process, and now we're running roughly 10 to 12% margins positive.
That's awesome.
So some of the things that we did, right? We essentially had dusty listings. Well, we dust those listings off. We essentially optimized our A+ content, created better images, 3D renders, infographics, all of that. Great. Optimized PPC spend as much as we could. Did that. We essentially cut losing SKUs, so we doubled down on winners.
That's a big thing. People think, let's just push harder. But if you know that you're losing money on something and it's just not going to work, I think there's actually a sense of relief just saying, okay, we made the decision on this. It's not losing money anymore. I'm kind of sad to see it go. But I think long run, you probably feel way better about making that decision than not.
Yeah, these SKUs were at the tail end of the maturity curve on Amazon. I call it the product death cycle, but like, the iPhone 2 couldn't be the iPhone 2 until they came out with the 3, and we didn't innovate with our other product lines and with our competitors, so those SKUs had to die. And so roughly about $700,000 of SKUs went to heaven.
Moment of silence for.
Pour one out for our dead SKUs.
How many SKUs did you end up cutting?
So I think we cut half our portfolio. So we had 500 private label SKUs. We cut to 250. We also created a criteria of how to cut those SKUs. So it was based on our the age, like how long it would take to sell through those SKUs, the velocity of those SKUs, and the profit margin of those SKUs. We set that criteria up, and then we liquidated as much as we could, circulated SKU sheets to competitors and to B2B liquidating businesses, and then anything else that was left over, we just destroyed. Then after that, we started working on price. And I mean, through that time, we were working on price and we were doing it manually. And then I started asking, well, why, right? Like, why is our price the way it is? And does it have to be that way? And look at how many reviews we have. Like maybe I have pricing power, or maybe I don't have pricing power, but we can get more velocity and offset competition and get better ranked and drive more profit. That's when Prophecy came about. And it just came from asking, like wondering why and saying, well, why does it have to be this way? And do I just trust what everyone else is saying in the Amazon community? Like, oh, don't change price, or just raise price 5%, and it just wasn't the truth. And then I started questioning a lot of other things. By the way, I've been on this like questioning everything journey, which I think is healthy.
Yeah.
And I started questioning our PPC metrics that we managed to, and wondering like, can I use PPC not to break even, but can I actually use PPC as a tool to amplify the price changes that we're making to amplify profits? And the answer is yes, you can. And so, yeah, those are, I can go into more detail if you're interested, but like those are the things that I've been working on.
Yeah, let's go a little bit deeper in what you're talking about, like advertising, increasing the profit from a price change standpoint.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Number one is I think Amazon is really good at showing you what you make and not what you keep, right? Everything they show you is meant to share with you what your revenue is, right? And it doesn't actually take into account the cost to acquire the customer. They don't know your costs. And most agencies don't manage that either, right? So essentially everyone's defining success in the PPC world as ACoS or ROAS. And I believe that there needs to be a shift and replacing every vanity metric that has revenue in it, replacing that with profit. So, and here's why. Here's the logic behind it. So you take a product, it's $25. You increase the price of that product 20%. Now you don't do that overnight, you do that over time, but you increase the price of that product 20%. Now it's $30. You essentially can increase your ACoS, which let's just say your ACoS is 20%. Your advertising cost of the sale is 20%. You increase that 20%. Now it's 24%. And with that, you're actually able to double your contribution profit. So price goes up, ACoS goes up, your contribution profit doubles. And that is really when I started to think, okay, there's a way to like harmonize price and spend to amplify profit. And like we're managing to these revenue metrics, what if we universally across the board replace those metrics with profit metrics, like profit on ad spend as an example. And that becomes our North Star.
And that's all stuff that you're now measuring with Prophecy.
Correct. So we started off with price. That was like our wedge. And now we're starting to give agencies decisions. We give them, for example, if someone comes to us and they have an agency, we give them a decisioning process where we essentially know where price is going, and we give the agency where spend or bid should go to mirror and marry to the price.
How much pushback did you get when you started saying, I don't think advertising is the end all be all solution here? Like, how much pushback did you get from people in the Amazon community?
Well, like people build, I mean, all these agencies, everything, Amazon, their second biggest line item on their P&L is ad spend.
Yeah.
And then agencies take a percentage of that ad spend. Typically, I'm not saying all, right? By the way, there's some great agencies out there. I'm not trying to bash all agencies.
I don't think I'm not taking anything you're saying as an absolute. Like there's definite nuance here. So all good.
So if you just can realize that ROAS could be misleading and that it can actually be hurting your bottom line and that it just makes whoever's managing your account, whether it's a brand or a PPC manager internally, it makes them look better. You can also be aware that it doesn't actually make your bank account look better. And so I did get a lot of pushback, and I haven't necessarily been like, I've been working with Prophecy clients on this, but I haven't been like out there so much around the advertising stuff in the world, specifically because like we're still building our own PPC stuff internally. We're still in the process. Like we've got 30 clients right now where we're doing all this PPC work, but the pricing stuff that I've obviously been out in the world with, and I've seen, our clients are seeing a 10 to 15% profit lift. That's gross profit dollars lifted on average because of our dynamic pricing algorithm that we built.
There's a necessary, like, part of this conversation is there's a necessary shift that has to happen perspective wise. So what you are focusing on and the narrative that you're telling yourself what we're after has to change in order for, I think, for this to make sense. And it's a positive change if you're keeping more money in your bank account, but that's not an easy mindset shift to make. So how are you seeing that with the clients that you're working with Prophecy with? How are you seeing people take that change and like, we need to, and by the time they're coming to you, they're already like willing to give that. But if you go into a brand today and they're focused on revenue, ROAS only, and you say, hey, we're going to make a existential shift in how you focus on stuff, there's going to be some fallout and some friction there. So I'm just curious how people have leaned in or not leaned into that mental shift.
I think that I think I shared this earlier, right? In order to be successful, you have to challenge the status quo, and you can't just do whatever everyone else is doing. So the reactions some agencies are like, hey, don't tell us how to spend the money, or a lot of them are just using softwares and they programmatically put in a target ACOS, and we come in and we're like, hey, by the way, ACOS or ROAS is just one part of the picture, but you can use POAS to guide your decisions around ACOS, meaning some people actually don't. So a POAS of 1 means break even. A POAS of under 1 means you're losing money. But sometimes on Amazon, depending on where you're at in the product life cycle or the product death cycle, so to speak, you actually may want to be losing money on Amazon or a less than 1 POAS. And that's okay, but that guides your decisioning process around what's an acceptable ACOS or tacos or ROAS. So you just have a clearer view of ad performance when you actually take into account the cost of delivering the product to the customer. But again, I haven't necessarily been like so out there like yelling at agencies. I'm good friends with a lot of agencies, right? I just think that we have to change the way things are done. And by the way, it's not just a secular shift, right? It's the fact that things got harder, and it used to be growth at all costs. On Amazon, it was growth at all costs. Like aggregators came in, billions of dollars came into the scene. They're just like making it rain
We got
money
this.
on
It's gonna,
Amazon.
yeah, it's gonna be fine. We can totally just grow this.
And then it was like, okay, it's not growth at all costs, right? It's actually profitable growth at the lowest cost. And that's because there's been a massive shift, right? We're sort of in the e-commerce winter right now, where companies are, well, their margins are being significantly compressed, and the P&L is being attacked on every single line item.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a really nice shift for Prophecy. I mean, I think we focused on a really interesting place, which was we focused on profit and we focused on AI. And AI lets you do things a whole lot easier and better and cheaper and faster and without making as many errors as a human being makes them. And yeah, we just focused on a really nice segment of the marketplace. And so we're just at the right place at the right time with the best idea and with software that actually works and tracks towards profitability.
A lot of people have used that term like AI in the past, and it's really. I mean, I could have a very long conversation about this. When you start poking holes in, I would say most people, but and especially before any kind of generative AI came out, when the conversation has just been red hot, people would say AI, and you dig a little bit deeper, and it's like, I don't know that that's AI. Like, there's some automation, and maybe there's like a little bit of machine learning that's happening, but that's not AI. Like, that's a very different type of technology. But people like, it's just crazy to me how it never gets old how impactful marketing is on something like, we have this AI powered software that's gonna, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about like, oh, we're gonna optimize ads for AI, or we're gonna do this thing that's gonna be AI powered. And the reality is, it's not AI. Like, I was on a I was on a discovery call with someone talking about how Amazon, crawls pages, and they're looking for, maybe they're finding terms or text in your images, things like that. And they started talking about, AI doing this, and I'm like, it's not AI, it's bots. Like, Amazon's had bots, these automated processes that are happening, and a lot of that stuff started from an algorithm they created. But an algorithm could be a formula in a spreadsheet. Like, it doesn't have to be this crazy, technology related thing. It could be, but that's an interesting space to be in. So how do you differentiate, like, what I mean, there's an AI education conversation that has to come, I think, before that.
Yeah, you are preaching to the choir, man. I mean, we've raised at Prophecy, we raised $2.5 million in December of 2021
Congrats, by the
to
way.
build, thank you, to build real AI. And there's nothing that's more frustrating than being in the space that's rampant with fake AI, like truly artificial intelligence, not real
Yep.
intelligence, right? And essentially without the tech to back it up. So there's a couple of things. First is like the definition of AI, in my opinion, right? Um, and the definition of AI essentially is a system, right, that's capable of self-improvement, independent of its human creator, right? So it can evolve, it can observe, it can learn, it can self-improve independently of me. So for example, when we put into our system that we want to programmatically optimize for profit without sacrificing rank, our systems will actually come up with its own individualized and independent nested if-then statements and build upon each other. We're talking about billions of if-then statements to help our brands reach the outcome that they want to achieve, that we want to achieve, which is profit in this case. So it is mathematical functions, to your point, but it also, and it's doing yes or no decisions, but it's creating those yes or no decisions, and it's fully automated, independent of a human being.
And that's what I think has been missing, is the improvement upon time. Because if you set a bunch of algorithms, it'll optimize to that thing, but maybe even to a fault too. If it's, or it'll get to that target to a fault and not take into consideration other things that could be hurting. Like if you're software that sets to an ACoS target only, it's going to get down to that ACoS target. It's not factoring in sales. It's not factoring in profit. It's focusing on that one input.
Yep. So a few things. I'll mention what we do, but I also want to get back to this fake AI because it's such
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
A boiling point for me. One is at Prophecy specifically, every single time we onboard a client, every ASIN, every product gets their own algorithm because every ASIN and product has its own demand curve and elasticity and has different competition. And we actually pull in the competitors per ASIN into the model. And the other thing that we do, by the way, is that we have every single SKU that's in our platform is supervised by our data science team. So to your point about making mistakes, the AI will make a mistake. It's not always right. And it gets better over time, right? With more patterns and more signals and more training. And so that is why we have somebody that's going in to all of our clients' profit dashboards on a daily basis. We probably know more about profit of our brands that we're managing price for than the brands themselves. So we supervise the intelligence to make sure that it actually is performing the way that we intend it to perform, and it doesn't like go off the rails. So, but back to the fake AI, the first piece of it is like, okay, there's all these brands or all these software companies that were claiming to use AI. You go to their LinkedIn and they have no machine learning engineers, they have no data scientists, right? So it's just a bunch of duct-taped if-then rules that are set up in the background that maybe you don't have exposure to.
Maybe they even just paid someone to build something for them and now they own it and that's it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could be, but most of the time that I see is that it's a workflow of weak logic that's if-then statements that are built. And then the website says AI, right? And then people don't know better because, well, it's kind of like if you're gluten-free or you're paleo or you look at the nutrition label and you're like, okay, this is keto. This is good for me. I'm going to go buy it. And you see that it's like exploding with the worst. No one's looking at the back label of the ingredients or what's in it.
Yeah.
It could be keto, but it could be the worst thing for you. And so that was like the first step of like, okay, there's a lot of noise in the space. And it's like super flustering to see after I poured so much money into this business to build real models. And then I realized that my competition is just a bunch of duct tape spreadsheets. But then ChatGPT comes out in 2022 November. And then you have all these software companies now, what I call embedding AI into their platform. Okay, cool. It's embedded AI. It's a feature. It's not a platform. And sure, you added .ai to your domain name because you've embedded it to ChatGPT. But that if everyone's using the same tool, like ChatGPT, to come up with the same titles, or maybe it's fluctuating ever so slightly, and then looking at the same keywords and pulling those keywords and pulling that into a software. To me, like there's like 12 different softwares on the market that do that, and it just floods. Again, I think it just commoditizes the word AI in a real way.
Well, in a bad way too, because it's normalizing something and creating a definition for something that's not fully real.
Totally.
I just thought maybe your name was Chad Rubin Al, but now I know it's AI.
Oh, is it coming up as my pronoun is AI?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's like a yeah, that's good. I think there's a misunderstanding about just like you said, like defining what AI is important. But then also like, why is it a thing or why can we use it? And a lot of people, I think people like to make predictions about stuff. I'm not so caught up in that. Like I think this is the direction things might be going, but saying in 2 years, this is going to be in 5 months, everyone's going to be replaced by AI and your wife and your husband will be AI. Like there's all these predictions that come out and people get super hyped and excited about it. But the one thing that you said that really stuck out to me is you've built these, algorithms and these very complicated if-then statements to figure out what's happening, and then it improves. But people have said, "Oh, AI is going to replace everything and everyone," and yada yada yada. But the reality is, how does that AI get started? It doesn't just get started because it becomes cognizant and is like, okay, I'm now self-aware and I will get moving. Like there's still an input and there's still a target and an end goal that has to be there, and that's formulated by the human. That's not, AI doesn't say, okay, here's my business plan and here's my. I mean, I get that you could plug something into ChatGPT and it could create something, but it's not saying here's what we should be going after and here's our idea for this. Like you have to have good inputs, and there's all prompt engineers. Like prompt engineers is a thing for generative AI, because in order to get a good result, you have to have a good prompt.
Totally. It's like going to the gym. What you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And a lot of people think that ChatGPT is just like going to the spa. You just go to receive, and that is just that is just not what.
Oh, that's
At
a
least
good
not right
analogy.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not what ChatGPT is about. And I'm like, look, I use ChatGPT. I'm a huge fan. I use it. I pay for it. It's up on my screen all the time. It is like a sidekick. It's like Sonic and Knuckles, if we can
Yeah, yeah.
date me back to Sega Genesis days.
Oh man.
It's like Sonic and Knuckles in a way, right? It's like my knuckle. And in my own company right now, right, we have our VAs, right? So like if you look at like the evolution of even Amazon, a lot of brands, you have like, okay, SOPs, great, and then everyone moved to like to VAs, and then now it's AI, right? You see this like evolution happening, and to me, I actually think it's this plus this
Yep.
plus this. Every single VA in my company, or every single employee in my company, gets a VA. Every single one. So some companies give out free water, some companies give out free lunches. I want my team working on the highest impact stuff that they possibly can be working on, and the way they do that is they get a VA. On top of that, we give them AI. Right? It's not to replace them. It's to enable
Yeah.
them, to empower them, to advance them, so we can get more done than we ever thought was possible.
How do you? That's. I remember you talking about everyone getting a VA, which I think is a really cool concept. There has to be like a very specific role that VA plays, because I'm guessing it's not just a okay, now do things for me. It's like, I need you to do these 5 things so I can focus on these 3.
Yeah. So for example, my sales team gets a sales assistant. For me, I have a marketing assistant. I'm doing all the marketing. Our customer success team, and we have been laddering up. So like it used to be that you go to the Philippines for like a low value resource that does more repetitive
Mm-hmm.
tasks. And I say that in an endearing way, but they have actually built a sophisticated workforce where now you can actually go and get sophisticated talent, and there's still the labor arbitrage opportunity that's available to you. So I've been laddering up my talent. For example, my head of customer support right now is from the Philippines, but first of all, she's not paid like the way you'd think about a VA would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
getting paid, and she is amazing. And then she has support to support her that's also happens to be in the Philippines.
There has to be a desire and a want there too from that person to want to level up. But I think I've noticed that some people are like, well, hey, why don't you? Because like my whole team is international at Cartology. There's some people in the U.S., there's some people in Europe, some people in the Philippines. But people are like, well, why go overseas? Why not pick town in the U.S.? I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of reasons I could say that, but there's a lot of good talent elsewhere. There's a lot of knowledgeable people, and like you said, there's a developed workforce that's really powerful. And there are certain countries or areas you can go to, and you'll start to find expertise. Like I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Romania is a really great place for e-commerce. But I don't know that people would know that if they're not looking there, if they haven't looked at that. And I think there's undeveloped resources like different countries, continents, even that there is a workforce that's there that needs to be developed. Someone has to get in there and do it, because it doesn't just happen on its own. But there's like people that are just waiting to be used or to be resources for others.
And how do you find your talent in, for example, like Romania?
Well, I found one person online uh, on a freelance place, and they just crushed it. But it was, and then they actually recommended more Romanian people to me. So,
Yeah.
so that was but they were a quality person and they recommended other good quality people. Most people don't want to refer someone, if they're good, they don't want to refer someone that sucks. But yeah, then they referred other people. I know this person, and there's a lot of people that are, I find it the with the implementation of aggregators, there was this huge increase in salary demands on the U.S. side, and I do not think it was all warranted from an experience standpoint and what someone could do. So people are getting paid a ton for the specific role. My agency is not huge. We don't have any funding. It's all bootstrapped by me. So if I'm going to bring someone in that's going to get paid something like that, they better be doing what I'm doing plus more. And that just was not, the capability wasn't there.
I think there was like salary inflation across the board. And I think in the Amazon space, it just so happened, I think, hit harder because of the aggregators coming in. And yeah, I think you hit it correctly, is that like these salary adjustments weren't warranted. It just more money beget more money being spent in the wrong places with the wrong butts in the wrong seats, and positions were getting elevated. It was havoc. And I think we're seeing the fallout of that happening right now.
I mean, people don't have jobs that were there before, and so maybe they made, really great money for a time period, but I don't think they're going to be able to level up like they might if they were going, you're jumping from one company to another.
Yep. But I'm fully remote. Prophecy, I mean, we have some people in the United States for strategic positions, and then that are important to the United States, and then outside of that, we go everywhere else. Somebody in South America, we have somebody in the Mauritius Islands, we have somebody, a couple of people in Europe. So yeah, I'm fully on board with a global workforce.
There's so many people that, especially in e-commerce, like it always is funny to me now when someone's in e-commerce and it's like, no, you have to come into the office. And it's like, you realize that you're an e-commerce company, right? Like that's not, that is always funny to me. Now I get that there are some companies that, like, I would love to be able to have, a day a week if I had a team here where we could get together and be together, but I wouldn't want it to be like you have to come in to do this thing. And there's some companies that were built that way, so it makes sense for them. But that's always strikes me as funny, is being e-commerce, but yeah, you got to be in this area or this office. And it's like the beauty of that remote is you give someone the freedom in a way that you cannot give them being in an office. Like there's no commute. They can take their kids to school or pick them up. Like there's a lot of, I can go work out, whatever. Like there's so many different opportunities for that person based on being remote.
At Stubana, we had about 50 people in office, and there's no question that I miss high-fiving people and going to get coffee and espresso and taking a walk together. But then you look at the trade-offs, and like a lot of my life has been reprioritized, right? Like I used to miss my kids' bath time, and now like I never miss a bath time. In fact, I do the bath time. I do dinner. I cook dinner. I get everything ready, and I work out in my home gym. Yeah, I never have to leave my house. But
that's like the best part is I go down in the morning, I work out, I have this platform that I built, I've got this rack, I've got all the weights and stuff that I need, so I can go work out. My commute back upstairs to take a shower is very quick.
Mm-hmm. One thing I realized, like going to the gym, for example, about efficiency, especially later in life, is that you go to the gym. Let's just say it takes you 20 minutes to get to the gym, or 10 minutes. If it's 20 minutes, that's 40 minutes there and back, and you have to shower.
Yep.
It becomes like 7% of your waking life is spent with that activity, and I've cut down on that a lot by just having a home gym. And I think I missed out though on like the camaraderie at the gym. And
there's definitely trade-offs. I think the one area where people who maybe have gone remote have missed out, and where I encourage them, is just make sure you still have community. Find people, if it's if you're an entrepreneur, fellow entrepreneurs, if it's at your church, your house of worship, if it's people who have same hobbies as you, like still have that community that you get plugged into and get built into, because that is the downside of being fully remote, is is not having that community, like you said, to be able to high five, or like I'll high five my daughter when she walks by, or if I'm, working the evening while my wife's there, I can high five her. But, that's the extent of my in-person co-working experience. All right, man, we covered so much today, and I think that's just kind of scratching the surface. I've invited other people to come do a part 2. I'm planning on having multiple seasons, so we'll definitely have to do, I think, a part 2 of this conversation. I'm interested to see where things have evolved since we have this conversation. But if people do want to find you and find out more about you, where would they look? Would they look in the corner of a spreadsheet, or would they go into a math hall and find some person teaching fractions, and you're in the back furiously writing notes about how to find profit in fractions and 4/5? And where can people find you?
So, as you know, I'm like really active on LinkedIn. So I post a lot of my thoughts on LinkedIn. I've been posting those thoughts on Twitter. My personal email is chad@prophecy.com. My mission is really to leave this industry better than how I found it, and I think I'm succeeding at that. But if you want to kick it, if you want to just talk shop, if you want to talk profit or anything above the line, happy to do so. But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Above the line. I love that. Yeah, so we'll have your details are below in the show notes here, wherever if you're consuming this on like a YouTube or something like that, but we'll have additional ways for people to reach out to you as well. But I appreciate you coming on, and I would just say to everyone out there, be willing to question, what is the reality of the situation, and if I make this change, what will happen? If I make this change, then what will happen? And be willing to experiment. I think the last place you want to be in is, well, my knowledge is set and I'm good for the rest of my life. And that's where you start to see people fall off, and people start to build things they don't need to build, or invest in things that they shouldn't be investing in, when if they had just said, well, why would we do this thing, and be willing to question it, I think they'd probably be a lot better off. So question everything.
One of my favorite quotes from Tim Ferriss is, reality is negotiable.
All right, people, we'll leave you with that. Reality is negotiable. What you perceive is that's the determiner of what will be. So come back and see us again, and we're out. All right, that was the show. What did you think? That was the longer game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, even go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you are active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, and you're in the retail industry? Then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon Marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given of your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.